Hi, welcome to the Inspiration of Painting. Well, we're all going to start a brand new painting today. This is something that we've had some requests for and something personally that I like to paint. We haven't done it yet and I'd like to give it a try. Now this is going to be a fairly complicated painting. It's going to take a little extra time perhaps. It's got a lot of things in it for learning purposes that are going to really benefit you as a beginning artist or even as an advanced artist. But what we're going to paint is a stream that is winding through the painting, coming over rocks, maybe a logs or sticks, and ending up with a small little drop like a little tiny waterfall. We're going to have trees and rocks and grass and all kinds of things. This is going to be an extremely detailed painting in that it will have a lot of things in it. Now, as far as the time of the year goes, a good chance we'll make it a fall scene, but who knows when we start painting what it's going to turn into. So let's get started. We'll block it all in the first session or two, and then we'll start detailing. Let's get started with our sky brush or our big blender brush. And like in most paintings, we're going to do the sky first. We need some gesso. Let's get a little gesso out here. And then after we get our gesso, we're going to do two things. We're going to wet the sky, then we're going to wet where the water is, and we're going to block both of those in simultaneously with the same color. Take your mister bottle, kind of mist that area, mist this area. And by the way, if you haven't made a sketch, you might want to just put a rough sketch in where the layout of this is. And before we go too much further, that's kind of an S shape like this. Just kind of curves through. We're going to have little banks and cliffs and things where the water's going to drop all over. We're going to have just a lot of things in there. Now, take your sky brush and distribute the water evenly. Same thing here. Just kind of wet it. Take your gesso and once again put a liberal coating of gesso on the canvas like this. We're not going to have an elaborate sky formation this time because we're going to concentrate on our foreground. Like so. Come down here and do the water area. Okay. Okay, now we have to work kind of quick here so that we can get the softness that we need. Come down here to this light blue. I want you to pick up a little bit of the dark blue and a little bit of brown. Now, don't mix it ahead of time. Put all three colors on your brush like this. And then just put it up here. And let's just kind of scumble it around up here in the sky. We're not after a particularly interesting sky. All we want is a little color because we're going to have so many trees and brush and stuff. Just sort of a gray colored sky. But by not mixing the color in advance, you'll get sort of a mix of color. You'll get light gray and you get a little brown. It's just sort of a dusty color. And same thing in the water. Reload your brush with the light blue, dark blue, little brown. This is just strictly underpainting. Hopefully by now, those of you that have stuck with us over the past few weeks, months, are learning now the reason why we underpaint things, and that's the secret to a good acrylic painting, is getting a good underpainting. Just blocking areas of darks and lights in. Now up here you can kind of smooth this out, but don't just make it blended where it's perfectly one color. Okay, now, got a soft gray sky, some light values, some darker values. You got your water blocked in here. Again, it's just simply underpainting is all this is. Doesn't look like much right now, but you could enter this in some modern art contest and probably win with it. That's the way they all start out. Okay, they all start out very impressionistic, very modernistic, nothing but pure design. Okay, now, in the background here, just because this is probably a stream that's in a forest, it could be up in the mountains, it could be down in any part of the country, but usually streams wind through a forest or something like that, and there's some little hills. So in the background, right back through here, let's go down to your palette, take a little purple, and a touch of the darker blue, the ultramarine blue. Come back up and let's kind of put a little purplish haze. Now you see the secret to creating the depth in a forest where is with these soft violets like this. Okay, that's what you want at your horizon, so to speak, back there. Now this part right in through here, these little hills, let's make them just a little darker. Come down here, take the purple, a little bit of green, a touch of blue, and you do the same thing here. Just kind of block it in like this. Come over to this side and block it in like this. Come right down to the water's edge. Soften your edges. I can't stress enough, and you probably get tired of me saying this, but concentrate every time you put a color on, keeping that edge fairly soft, because there's almost always the fact is you're always going to come back and overlay on acrylic, and if you have a hard line, it's hard to cover it up. So keep it soft. All right, now the area that's left here, this area here, this area here, this area here, is going to be done similarly to that, but just darker. Again, just underpainting. It has nothing to do with the finished product. We're just trying to get the canvas covered and block in areas of composition. That's all we're doing. We're composing the painting right now. So let's take the same brush, and we're going to take the same color. We're going to take purple and green, a little blue, maybe a little brown, all the dark values. Again, you don't have to do much mixing, just as long as you're getting this underpainting on here. Block this in. I'm using a vertical stroke. And if you got a chance to follow along with our buffalo painting in one of the other sessions, this is the stroke we use to underpaint the whole thing with, and it is really effective. Now the edge of this stream right here will be a drop off. There'll be rocks and dirt and little areas that are broken off. That's really going to be a fun thing to do, but you don't need to worry about it right now. Just concentrate on blocking in your top part here, leaving all your edges soft. It's important. Okay, see, we're getting a lot of color in here too. This is, especially when you're doing a mountain scene or a scene where there's lots of water, you want the cool and the warm colors to intermingle with each other. Now come over here. This is probably the easiest part of all the paintings in a way, but then again, in another way, it's very difficult. Because without some training in composition, design, perspective, basic drawing, and all those things, it's kind of difficult to understand why you do what you do here. Now I'm going to drag this out here on across the water, and there's a reason for that. Later on, we're going to have rocks and logs and stuff where the water's coming over them. So anytime I get a chance, now I'm going to go ahead and block in just some dark areas that will be covered up later with water. Now we're working relatively quick here. We don't need to be in a hurry, but we don't want to waste any time either. There's just no reason to be too careful or too neat. Okay. All right, now this is probably the ugliest thing you've ever painted in your whole life. But that's okay, because that's what it's supposed to be. If it's really ugly, that means you're doing okay and it's going to come out great. We'll create a lot of distance and depth with the different values of the grays as they go into the distance, the purples and the blues. And now we're ready to block in some of the darker values where the rocks and the grasses and those kind of things will go. So we now can put our big brush down, wet it. Let's get the number 10 bristle brush. And let's block in on the edges here, just sort of our bank. Now that's done very quickly, again, very loose. Take a little water, take some ultramarine blue, a little purple, a little brown. We're going to block in the edges like this. Just kind of be loose and free and kind of scrub it. Now this won't make a whole lot of sense to you right at first, like I mentioned before, until you start putting in the details. but this is what you underpaint with. These will be the banks or the edges of the water. And here in just a second we'll be also blocking in where the rocks go. Now right across this middle section right here, I bet some of you already are thinking, man, I've lost my mind. You see, most of us, and I've seen so many people start paintings like this, they've got their pencil out, they've got every rock sketched out, laid in place, and it's almost like it's a paint by number painting before they're finished. They've got their brush up here and they're painting every little rock. That is not the way a professional painter paints a painting. You do everything in masses. You do everything in large quantities of color and shapes and forms. You take these forms and make something out of them. You don't do them individually. Now, in some cases, certain types of painting require that kind of a foundation, like some watercolor paintings require a little more thought, a little more planning, because you only have one or two chances and it's over. Here you can go back and rework, reform, and do a lot of things. Okay, now we're building in just some dark areas. The water and the rocks will be intermingling together here. Again, now it may not seem like it to you, but every time I put a stroke on here, it's just a matter of habit that I go back and make sure that edge is a little soft, just a little bit soft. Come down here on this edge. The amazing thing about this is after 2 or 3 sessions, you're going to see this thing turn into a beautiful painting, and it just blows your mind, because there's no way you can conceive that all these blobs of paint could turn into something beautiful. But it does. It really does. Okay. This is going to be a big rock formation. To tell you the truth, right down here in the corner. So let's make some shapes here that are somewhat conducive to a rock form. Okay. Now, you ought to be thoroughly disgusted at this point, and that's good. So let's move on now to the next part. And now we've got everything sort of semi-blocked in. We're going to start coming from the background forward and begin developing the detail that I was just talking to you about. Now, it's going to take some time, but it's really not difficult once you understand the basics behind it. Now, rinse your brush and lay it down, and probably, because this is maybe at the edge of a forest or maybe coming out of a forest, we don't have to have any big mountains. What we're going to have are a few trees and things in here to kind of suggest the fact that we are just coming out of that kind of a situation. We'll start with our charcoal. I'm going to put this down here a little bit, and I think I'll have like a tree here. There's going to be several trees here, but not too many. Now, every one of these trees have a reason for being here. They either act as an eye stopper, or perhaps they're a part of the center of interest. See, your eye really will focus and come back in here, and your eye will ultimately end up looking in this area. So whatever main center of interest we're going to have, if we're going to have something, needs to end up back in this area. Now, actually, I think what we'll do is take our number 10 brush again. Let's go down here to our palette, take a little white, and in this muddy area, this gray, brown, or just start with white, take a little purple, a little burnt sienna, a little green, get sort of a muddled color, not too dark. And in the background here, let's start blocking in some trees, okay? Now what I'll do is take my brush and I'm going to just kind of dab on, see, like this. Start back here. Let's go ahead and form these trees. And we'll come back and highlight them a little bit later. Let's get the background painted first, okay? Just get them blocked in. Like so. Now again, I'm really don't know exactly what time of the year this is going to be, but I think it looks like we may be right on the edge of fall here. It's very possible. I'll put some trees back here in the distance. Okay, like so. Now these are trees, of course, that still have their leaves on them, but because we're blocking them in a sort of a neutral tone with the gray, we can highlight them any color we want to, thus turning this into a spring, summer, fall, not quite winter, but we could turn it into some of the other seasons. Now see, I'm just kind of beginning to shape some trees and things now that we didn't have before, and it's helping create some distance in the painting. You can start seeing way back there because that pulls out, that makes those mountains recede. Now let's go right on up this little hill right here, and I'm going to change the color slightly, adding a little touch of purple. Let's go up here. Okay, here's a common problem that we all face. I don't care how good you are. I got a little too much water in there, and by doing that I can't get the form to hold. It's too transparent. The shape doesn't stay together, so then you have to just either use a paper towel or something just to absorb the moisture. Maybe that you have too much on your palette down here. But you've got to keep this paint, the right amount of paint and the right amount of water is critical. Absolutely critical. Now, let's just keep working. Okay, now see right over here in this area right here, we're going to pull the tree up a little bit higher so that we'll be able to start immediately getting an eye catch, sort of a triangle shape, so your eye will begin focusing here. Remember, composition has a major part to play. Well, it is, I would say, the key player in all paintings. Composition is absolutely the most important part of any painting. You can be the greatest painter in the world, but without good composition, it's really hard for a painting to work. And always scrubbing, keeping the edges to things very soft and subtle. Okay, now because we want to have some fun with this painting, but we want to give it some depth, I'm going to go ahead and pick up a little bit of sunshine, or erase some of that charcoal. This hill right here is going to come in front of these trees and behind these. And the way that's going to work is I'm going to take my brush, take a little white, touch of red and a touch of yellow. And I'm going to go ahead and put some sunlight coming down the hill. I'm going to let it kind of go back in behind. I want to scrub it like this, keeping it very soft, very subtle. It'll come down in front, and it also goes down in behind, therefore creating another layer of depth. Just by simply having the right contrast in the right place at the right time. And so you can just throw in some sunlight here and just kind of be a little bit more rugged with it. Scrub it in. Letting some of the background come through. Little by little you can see the painting starting to recede into the distance and then the foreground coming forward. Really neat. Now, we've gotten this layer, now we're to this layer, this part right in here. We're going to make that a little darker right now, and then we'll highlight it. But we go back down here and we take a little green and a little purple with a little white. Put this up here and see if that's, it needs to be darker than this color you've got there, so let's go a little shade darker. There we go. It's kind of a grayish green. And just kind of come with a vertical stroke down, creating a bit of a hill. And the top of that has the texture of grass. And I want you to notice now, we're being very careful with this painting because every time we come a little bit more forward, it gets a little more intense in color, a little more darker, the value. So now I'm coming right up here. Okay. So. It really is still amazing to me that we've come this far, this quick, and we're beginning to already see the development of this painting, and it's just now in its very infinite stages. But that's the beauty of acrylic painting in layers. We layer the paint, one layer of paint on top of another. Okay, you see the distance now? We've got this value, this value, this value, and this value, and that puts us way back there in the distance, and it makes a great opportunity to have your eye flow way back into the painting. Okay, now let's come over here to this side because this little value right here will be similar to this one. So let's just take it in. If you've probably noticed by now, I don't clean my brush too often, so I'm just going to take a little touch of water, a little yellow, a little white, maybe a little red. And I'm going to come up here like so. And right underneath this layer of trees, I'm going to put that. Actually, I think that's too yellow. I'm going to add some red to it, maybe a little white to give it a little more of a peachy color. That's a little better. Not much, so a little more red. Okay, good deal. I'm just going to kind of soften this edge now. Again, keep any edge soft. If you ever have to come back and make an edge harder, that's easy to do. But to come back and soften an edge, it takes a lot of work, and sometimes you can really ruin a very important part of your painting. Okay, now we've got this, all this is coming forward, and we're going to start pulling in now some of the bigger areas of darkness where the bigger rocks are going to go. It's very important, okay? Now, let's switch to our number 6 bristle brush. Okay, number 6 bristle brush. This brush is the best brush for doing intermediate blocking in and just nothing that needs too much detail. And we're going to use blue, brown, and purple. Remember, those are the shadow colors. Okay, let's find a spot for a couple of rocks. How about right here? Let's start right here with a rock. Now, don't clog up the stream completely, or you're going to have a lake, and we don't want that. Just be very careful that you do not clog up your painting. Put a big rock here. We have a couple out here in the water, but I'm not making a solid color. Now, I know this seems funny to you. We're just putting blobs, but that's what we have to do. I think we're going to end up probably with a log that has fallen across here. Let's just take our charcoal and see. Keeping in mind now, this painting is not completely planned in advance. Basically, we kind of take care of that as we go along. That's what really makes you become a very creative and very well-trained artist, is being able to create as you go. Let's say we have a log coming in here that's fallen, and it's coming like this behind this rock. Now, we're not going to have it go all the way across the page, of course. We will have eye stoppers, and it'll be in grass, and there'll be some limbs and things on it that keep you pulled back in there. But there will be a log here, and the water's either going to be running under it or over it or something like that, or it may be that we'll take it out before it's all over. Just don't know yet. That's part of the beauty of being a painter, because you can be your own boss. All right? Now, let's keep blocking in the area where some rocks go. And as we start winding down this program, be thinking about how many rocks you want to paint. Think about where you want them to go. And I'm going to suggest, for those of you that have not had a whole lot of experience, just get you a couple of blank canvases and do nothing but rocks. Just practice painting rocks. All you start with is a blob like this, and you turn it into something by adding your highlight. All painting is formed from dark to light. That's the best way to create form, is from dark to light. Need to put one over here. And of course we're going to have reflections in the water, and we're going to have all kinds of colors in here later. Let's just get this going first. Okay. Then after you get all of your rocks kind of in place, then it'll be time to start finishing up locating where trees go, and we'll just keep coming forward and forward and forward and forward and refining the painting. Now, a couple more spots for rocks. Fix there a little bit. And the color for your rocks basically should be dark, but if it's like this, kind of blue, kind of gray, kind of purple, fine. Rocks are different colors. They're not all brown. Just like bark on a tree isn't all brown. There's lots of color out there in nature that most of us have a tendency to not see. And especially until you start painting. Okay? All right. As we go along here, as usual, we're starting to run out of time. I'm going to turn it over to you now. So between now and the next time we meet, I want you to find and finish blocking in the painting, get your rocks located, sketch in some trees and things, and kind of have some fun building your composition. Thanks for joining us today on the Inspiration of Painting. Stay inspired. God bless you, and we'll see you next time. Hi, welcome back to the Inspiration of Painting. We're going to continue on with our mountain stream, and so if you'll grab a piece of charcoal, the soft vine charcoal that we use for sketching, I'm going to give you a little bit of indication of what else is going to go in here before we start the painting. Now by now you've probably had a chance to block most of it in, and remember, we're still underpainting, which is the preliminary areas. We block in darks and lights to establish form, shape, and some value, but now it's time to start putting the details in. So if you'll take your charcoal, I want you to notice up here in the top part, I've roughed in where some trees are going to go. And after doing some thinking about this painting, I've decided that I think it would be a lot of fun to put some aspen trees in here. So that'll be an interesting thing to do. So let's just kind of sketch in up here on the hillside here. And down here, just kind of put some little lines up where you think the grove of aspen trees will go. Like so. Usually aspen trees grow in groups, and they're very tall and slender. They're a great vertical advantage to any painting because it breaks up your horizontal flow. In this case, we need things to break up both horizontal and vertical flow. So we're going to have some aspens here, we'll have a group here and here, probably have a couple of smaller pine trees in here, and then that'll create a nice interest. And not only that, but the color is nice. We're going to make this a nice colorful painting, and the golden glow of the aspens in the early fall, late summer is really a nice touch. So after you've kind of blocked in where your basic aspen trees are going to go, I think we'll go ahead and put a couple of small pine trees in here. One over here on this corner. Now I know some of you may be a little frustrated sometimes about painting trees. We blocked in some distant trees here. Those are strictly to add depth to the painting. They don't have to have any specific details. And then over here we'll have a couple of smaller pine trees. Over here we'll have a couple of bigger ones. And more than likely down in the foreground we'll have one or two great big ones, but we won't sketch those in until we get some of the underpainting highlighted, detailed, and some of the background completed. Alright, now we're going to get ready to move down to our palette and start beginning to work in highlighting, blocking in trees, and so forth and so on. So if you would, down here on your palette, so let's get to our number 6 bristle brush. That's the one we use the most for blocking in and some minor details. I think we'll start first of all by blocking in some pine trees. So let's take a little Hooker's green, a touch of dioxazine purple. Let's get those two mixed here on the palette. Now I overdid the purple, so let's put a little more green in there. Now by the way, anytime you're mixing with green, and I can't stress this enough, always mix its complement, which usually is a form of red, which purple is, or it could be burnt sienna, or it could be red itself. Okay, now we have this sort of a kind of an olive green. It's pretty dark. Starting up here on the, I'm going to lower this a little bit. On the right hand side, these are going to be simple and very quick. Okay, you're going to take your brush sideways using the chisel edge, and you're going to create a line going up. And then you're going to take the corner of the brush and you're going to very quickly create the leaves. the foliage part. Like so. Put a little small one right there. Now at the base of the tree, as you can see here, you just kind of smudge them together. We will, at some point in time, highlight those to separate the trees. One of the biggest misconceptions in painting, and after doing hundreds of seminars and workshops around the country, the biggest problem we have when we do trees is most of us have a tendency to line everything up in a row and space it apart evenly to where it looks like you've taken a ruler and measured. Always overlap. Overlap is a critical aspect of painting. Okay? You can always come back and separate with different values of color, highlights, and so forth and so on. All right, now, after you've got that group of trees in, let's move over to the left side of the painting. A little more paint on your brush. And let's put in a little bit larger one. Let's say right there on top of the hill. Let's go right on up, perhaps even off the canvas if need be. By the way, some of you may have a little bit higher or lower lines on your hills than I have, so it doesn't really matter if your tree goes all the way off or not. But be sure it's taller than the ones that you have over here. This will create a balance. Now again, using the chisel corner. Now I don't know if they can close in, but I'd like for you to see what part of the brush we're actually using. Some of us don't understand that, and when I teach classes, okay, the brush is flat across the top, as you can see. But when I put it up here, instead of using the flat of the brush, I tip it and use the side or the corner. This is what we call the chisel corner. All right? That's how you can control and get the very small limbs. Now, as you come down into the rest of the tree where it gets larger, then you can go on into the flatter part of the chisel edge of the brush and create a lot more wide and diverse type of stroke to create your tree. But when you're trying to get a thinner area, always turn it on the corner. And that's how you get control of this brush. Most of us struggle with controlling this brush. Very important. All right, now see as I come on down, just get up a little courage here and just build this tree right on out. And as it comes down, it gets a little wider. And then when you get to the bottom, see, I just kind of smudge it all together. It's not important that you get real carried away with any detail. Also, I'm going to put just a couple of smudges in the background, as you can see, just to fill in space. Just to fill in space. Okay? Now, we have both sides of our painting blocked in with our pine trees. Now, not to say that there won't be other pine trees develop as we need to, but right now we're going to leave those. We're going to block in our aspen trunks, and then we're going to move on down with some highlighting on the rocks and begin flowing the water, put our log in, and do some things that we need to do. So rinse your brush, lay it down. Now the real trick of the trade is getting ready to happen here. This is something where a lot of us don't understand, but this big brush now is what we're going to use to make the trunks of the aspen trees. And the first time I showed this in a workshop, I never will forget the complete silence that went over the whole class, because everybody thinks you paint a house with this. Well, let me show you some things that you need to learn about painting trees. First of all, you take the brush, and it's wet. By the way, this is pre-wet. You take your fingers and squeegee the bristles together so that it's nice and flat. You can see it's almost, just almost like a razor blade right across the end. It's tapered, very flat. Now you're going to take that same brush. You can add a touch of water if need be. You're going to come down here and you're going to take a touch of blue, a touch of burnt umber, and you're going to mix these two colors together. Now, keeping in mind that this is a very sort of a washy color. There's a lot of moisture down here. I may have too much, in fact. Let me run up here to my canvas real quick and see. Yeah, I've got too much water. The way you know if you have too much water is if you put it on and there's a lot of canvas showing through, okay? So what I'm going to do is take my paper towel and absorb some of the moisture out on my paper towel. I'm going to go down here and wipe some of the moisture off of my palette. Then again, I'm going to flatten it out so that the end of my brush has a chisel edge, very sharp. Take the blue and the brown once again. Now this time, I'm working it in. Now I want you to notice this is very important. So many of us overlook the real most important parts of painting, and that's it starts down here on your palette. Notice how I'm putting the brush down flat. That keeps the bristles flat together, continuing the chisel edge, and it evenly distributes the paint all the way across. So now all I have to do when I get ready to paint is pick it up, and the paint's evenly distributed into the bristles. Now we go up to our canvas. Now you turn your brush sideways and do it quickly. By the way, this is the underpainting. I know aspen trees have a white trunk, but they start with a dark trunk, okay? Just like this. Turn your brush sideways and you're going to pull back towards the right. Do several, and pretty soon when you get the hang of it, you can do them quickly. Now don't make them all just straight as an arrow. They have a tendency to bend. They'll lean one direction or the other. Remember, you're just simply underpainting. That's all you're doing. Don't line them up all in a row. Let some kind of bend and overlap like that one I just put in there, as you can see. So they're all kind of close together. There'll be lots of shadows on the ground, so you won't really see the base of them that much later. Okay. Now you need to have a couple of shorter ones for variety, for composition purposes. Okay, then I'm going to move up here. And by the way, the pine trees on the right hand side are in front of the aspen, so when you put these aspen trunks up, be sure that the trunks are behind these pine trees here. Actually, the ones we just did are down in the foreground a bit. These are back on top of the hill, sort of behind it actually. Just do it kind of quickly. Again, I can't stress enough, don't piddle with this. Okay. Now every once in a while you can throw one in just as a sort of a teaser to get your eye moving from one bunch to the next. And also remember that when we put all the leaves on here, they will overlap each other, and pretty soon your whole thing falls together. Now we come over here with another small group. Now these are a little further down in the valley, so they won't come up quite as tall. They may be as tall in actuality, but because they're down lower, they won't have the same height that the other bunch has. But if you were to take the same tree and put it over here, you can see because it's up higher that it would have the same height. So these don't necessarily need to be as tall. Okay. Now, that's the basic trunks. Now notice I've left this area open here, and the reason is we want to have a lot of distance in this painting, as we spoke about earlier, and this will help keep us going. Now if you just completely close that up, your eye wouldn't flow on in and around behind the trees and so forth. So right now you've done two things. You've got your pine trees blocked in and the trunks to your aspens blocked in. All right, now let's move on down a little bit further. Let's switch brushes. Wet this one to move down to our number 6 brush, our bristle brush. Now, we blocked in a lot of dark values on the painting last time just to establish where the darks are going to go, where the rocks are going to go, and so forth. Now we're going to actually start highlighting these rocks. Now this can take a long time. Some of you will spend forever on one rock. Well, I'm again going to show you the one-stroke method of painting rocks. And because we do have such a short amount of time on the program, I have to give you the basics and the best instruction I can, and then you have to refine your technique. So down here on our palette, we're going to take our white, little touch of burnt sienna, a little touch of blue, the ultramarine blue, get sort of a tannish color. Now our sunlight's going to be coming in from the right hand side, so let's just very quickly now go through here, and I'm going to put a quick stroke. Might just be good for you to watch this for a minute. I'm going to highlight quickly. Now if you got too much water on your brush, it's going to be a little bit too heavy. Okay, so sometimes it's good to kind of dry it out. You can even take your finger and kind of soften the edges of them. Now very quickly we're going to establish highlights, and then we'll come back with the darker values for the finishing touches. Notice it's one stroke. You can turn a blob into a beautiful rock. Now see, notice all along the shoreline here, we put this dark value. The reason we did that is because we want to come back with this highlight that we're using, and that creates the shoreline or the edge, like there's little pebbles or small boulders. Okay, notice how quick, and again I'm using the chisel corner of the brush to create small things, use more of the flat part of the brush to create the larger ones. Now, see, here's a big blob over here. It doesn't look like anything, but I want you to watch what you can do with it here. Just by putting a quick stroke across the top, down the front, you've created a rock. In fact, it could be a collection of rocks here. Okay. Then we move over to the other side. We've got a large rock here, kind of a big slab. See, I'm kind of dry brushing, skipping around, leaving some of the dark values coming through. That's how you get the three-dimensional form. And right down in this pile of darkness, that's where you're going to put a pile of rocks. And all you do is you find selected areas, like so. See, I'm just making little dabs, creating like pebbles or whatever. Come down here to these other blobs. Now, just because you've got a dark spot doesn't mean it has to be a rock. It could just be an area of shadow, okay? Don't over detail a painting. In between these rocks, in the areas where we have the gray color, that's where we'll put grasses and maybe some flowers and all kinds of things. But right now you're just trying to get the rocks established so you know how to finish the water. And it's just quick strokes. That's what I call it, the one-stroke method. And if you learn nothing else today but how to paint rocks, you will have accomplished a great deal, because this is a major accomplishment, learning how to paint rocks that look like rocks instead of a bunch of turtles crawling across a canvas or something like that. Okay, now we're developing a basic form to each rock by quickly highlighting. Coming down here on the left-hand side, I'm going to have to mix a little more color. Remember, it's white, a little burnt sienna, and a little touch of blue. Now, this sunshine or this highlight color can vary from painting to painting and from rock to rock depending on the painting. It doesn't have to be that color. It can be a little tanner or a little grayer. Just don't get it too white. Okay? Now, here's a big rock over here that we want to put in the painting. Okay? Now, after you get the basic rock blocked in there, you can always come back and add cracks and crevices and some small details to enhance the shape, the form, or whatever. And notice what I'm doing. I'm taking every single area where I might have a rock and I'm quickly developing that shape. You will have time on your own to come back and detail. But this is how every painting begins. I don't care if it's how good you are or how famous you are or whatever. All paintings begin in the abstract form. Okay? And sometimes the abstract form, if you understand it, is very beautiful. Okay, now, we've got most of our rocks pretty well blocked in. I'm not going to take the time right now to put any details in there, but I am going to go on with the water. Now, keeping in mind that the water is going to reflect not only the sky color, but it's going to reflect the colors of the things around it. The rocks, some of the grasses, it'll reflect a lot of things. A running stream will pick up all kinds of dark and light values because it's not still. So I want you to start now with the same brush and the same mixture. We're going to mix a little more of a gray-green, and you take a little blue with a little green, a touch of purple, and maybe a touch more green. You can throw a little sienna in there. And starting right over here underneath these rocks, I want you to turn your brush sideways. Now don't be afraid to do this. And I want you to scrub or dry brush in this dark value, which will sort of let you know that the water is picking up some reflection from this little hillside right here. And same thing down here. Although we have already put some color down in here from the rocks, you need to gray it and just smudge in throughout the water areas of darkness, especially where the water is going to be coming over something or under something, like right in here. See, I know this looks terrible, but you just have to trust me. You've got to have a dark underpainting in order for the highlights from the water as it trickles through to work properly. The darker values will be up against the banks. The lighter values will be out towards the center. All right. So now you just keep working and dry brushing. This is scrubbing. That's why we use our bristle brush, because it will take a lot of punishment. And when you finally wear it out, they're cheaper to replace. So, and you do wear them out using this technique. All right, now we've laid in some dark values throughout the area where the water is. We're going to have several places where the water may be rolling over rocks or something, or over logs, and we're going to emphasize those now. You take the same color, add a little more blue and a touch of burnt umber to it to get a little darker value. Okay, for instance, right here where the water's going to turn, I want you to just kind of block in some more dark values. We don't need to highlight anything here, just block in some darkness. Up here, where we've kind of already created a little bit of an area where the water's going to be moving. Back here. Maybe come out here just a little bit. Okay, now those are the areas where we'll pull water over here just a little bit. Now, after you've kind of got some of the dark values blocked in, then we're going to actually start the water. Now, this in itself is not difficult, but it does take a little practice. So I'm going to show you, how we practice. If you'll come down to your palette, rinse your brush out real good. Now, there's actually two things you can do here. You can use your number 6 brush or your number 10, because sometimes the number 10 brush being wider will give you a much more flexible water. So I will use both of them. I'll start with number 6, but I've got them both ready. Down here on your palette, you're going to take your brush now and you're going to take a little gesso. You're going to work it into your brush like this. Now notice what I'm doing to my brush. I'm fanning it out, really fanning it out. Now I'm going to add just a little touch of, I'll say this light blue violet, just to tone it down some so it's not so white. And I'm thinking about, let's just add a little touch of yellow. Now when I say a touch, that means touch. Fanning it out, getting your brush fully loaded and the bristles separated some. Then you start back here in the very back. Now that has to be fairly dry. If you have too much water in there, it's not going to work. You start back here in the background, and you're going to dab, first of all, a little texture where the water is beginning. Now, this little first section right there is a little drop off, so you dry brush over, light touch, and you can see the bristles creating sort of the fall. Then you come down into the water, and back and forth you go now. Kind of creating a little bit of a movement. Now when you get to this section, you're going to have water moving over some rocks. So now you come over like this, just pull it over. Now this you may have to do a little bit of experimenting in order to get this like you want it, because you want it to look really like it's moving. Now we'll brighten this up later, but right now you're just establishing the water moving over some rocks or logs or debris or whatever. Then as you come across and down, and you're letting the bristle brush create the movement of the water and the little highlights, then you put some motion in here, little concave strokes. across the water over the dark values that we rubbed in there earlier. This not only softens, but it also adds a little bit more of a glossy effect to the water. Now also it ties everything together. I'll reload. Notice it's I don't know, it's kind of a comma on top of the water here. This is really a lot of fun. It also is a good lesson because you'll learn how to use the brush in different angles from different situations to create different effects. For instance, when we get to this rock over here, we need to move around it. Okay, now I'm going to reload my brush because it just dried out on me over here. We're working under some fairly hot lights in the studio and it seems to dry up a little quicker. I've reloaded my brush. Now I'm going to come around these rocks like the water is moving. But I want you to notice something that's really important. Every time you put a stroke of water, it's got to be a parallel stroke to something in relation to it. For instance, as I come out this way, the strokes are parallel with the water's edge. That's what makes the water look flat. In fact, all of your strokes should have a parallel stroke to the thing that's in relation to it, like the bank or whatever. Now as I come out into the main part of the water, we begin creating a little bit more of a softening. Now we're going to come to the next area where the water falls over. Again, loading your brush, fanning it out, making sure there's plenty of paint in there, but yet still kind of dry. As we hit this edge right here, then you come on over. This one's going to fall a little bit more. So let's quickly kind of get this in. Again, with the dry brush technique, you can create maybe 2 or 3 layers of falls here where the water... By the way, I had earlier sketched in, as you know, a tree trunk here, which don't let that get in your way. Just wipe it out or paint right over it. Dry brush coming over, letting some background show through. I think now you're going to begin seeing why we put the dark values underneath, because without them your water would not look wet. It's pretty white and washy up in here, but as it hits this, it comes over and the dark values come through and your painting looks a little more three-dimensional. Okay, we're running out of time, so I'm going to go ahead and continue on with the water. Noticing that I'm just pulling up over. You can keep adding a little more thicker paint to get the white to stay white, but I always add a little yellow to it or something. As you come down into the rest of the water here, flatten out your strokes. As you come around, you can create all kinds of movement, letting the darker background come through, okay? Well, as usual, we're running out of time on the Inspiration of Painting. I thank you for joining us today. Stay inspired. God bless you. And we'll see you next time on the Inspiration of Painting, and we'll try to finish up our water. Hi, welcome back to the Inspiration of Painting. Well, as I told you last time, we're going to try to finish this up, or at least get it to where you can finish it on your own. We have a lot of work to do today, so let's dive right into this and get started. First thing we're going to do, though, is block in some areas of grasses where the darker value, so we can have room for highlights and flowers. Then we're going to go right to our aspen trees, down to our log, and just do some miscellaneous things to kind of get you rolling so that you can kind of finish this up the way you want to in your own studio. Let's switch to our number 10 brush now, and on your palette we're going to use a darker color, and we're just going to block in some grasses around the rocks and different places. So let's take the green, the hooker's green, and I'm going to have a little bit more out there. Hooker's green is such a rich color. You can add so many things to it to tone it down, to change the values, but you will start with straight hookers, a little touch of purple to get the green out of it. And then we're going to move up to our palette here. Now it's fairly dry. I'm working this into my brush real good. And right up here along this edge, now you see the lighter colors, you don't want to mess with that area, but right down in here, okay, I've got too much water and a little too much paint in my brush, so I'm not getting the grassy effect, so I'm going to Okay, here we go. Now, I want you to pull your brush up in an upward motion with your bristles kind of separated. This will create a sort of a grassy effect, and you just gently come in between the rocks, like so, dragging it up. Now come right down to the water's edge, around some of the rocks. Now, one of the neat things about this is as you come across here and you get close to the water and you're pulling the grass up, drag a little bit of that down into the water, like so. And remember what I spoke to you about last time was that anything you have above the water, you're going to also reflect into the water. So you kind of smudge a little bit of the green into the water. Now remember, we're still in sort of a semi-underpainting state. We're going to come back later, you'll have brighter highlights on your rocks, you'll put brighter highlights on your water, on your grass, and so forth. So it's going to require a few more things to get it to that state. Right on across. Now I have sketched in a large pine tree over here, or just maybe a dead tree. It's something that you may want to have in there later, but at least it kind of breaks up the horizontal flow of the painting. Just keep bringing the grass up until you get the dark values in there, overlapping each other. Okay, and again, bringing it down into the water. Now, very quickly, just to kind of show you what we're going to do with the rocks. You see, you've come back in, you've laid your grasses in around the rocks. Now, very quickly, let's switch to our number 6 bristle brush down here on our palette. I'm going to show you what you're going to do later on. Okay, you can start it now if you want to, but as you finish the grasses, then you'll brighten the rocks. And all you do is you take a little white with a touch of yellow, maybe a touch of red to get the sunshine color, and the color can vary depending on, you know, how much sun you want in the painting. Then you come up here and you start putting on the final brighter highlights on your rocks. And see, this is what makes them stand out against the green grass, along the water's edge. This is how you clean up any areas where you smudged on top of them with the grass or whatever, and they become a lot more independent. Then everywhere you have one that's along the shoreline where you've put a rock, then very quickly you put a little smudge in the water, just like this, using the corner of the brush. That creates just a bit of a reflection from the highlight on the rock, which is a very important thing to do. Okay? Now, okay, so see now you've highlighted your rocks. They stand out against the grass. They look good against the water. You've created a beautiful, beautiful three-dimensional effect. Now this big rock over here that we had, you might want to go ahead and highlight it a little brighter, because now it is against the darker background. And it too needs a little reflection, but a brighter highlight. These you don't want to highlight yet because we haven't got the dark values in around them, so that comes in later. All right, now that you've done that grass, let's move over and do this area of grass and this area so that we can get our log in there and highlight these rocks and try to get a few things here that you need to know about. Switching back to your number 10 bristle brush. Remember the color was Hooker's green with a little purple. You can throw a little red in with it, which is to complement, or just use the purple if you want it darker. But I'm going to start once again right up here against the water's edge, up here by the first area where the water falls, and I'm going to drag it up. Now if it's too dry, you're going to get a real scratchy look on the canvas, and that bothers a lot of people. Sometimes it doesn't look good, it doesn't look professional. So try to get just enough paint on there that it flows evenly. And notice I'm just dragging it up. I keep loading my brush and bringing it up. You let one row or one layer overlap the other, just like so. Keep loading it. Now this gives the painting a lot of nice texture, and it gives it some dark values that you need to work with. Painting doesn't have to be so organized in its when you're blocking it in as it does when you detail it. I just keep coming forward. Now as you come over here in front of the water, pull the grass right up in front of it. That's what also helps set the waterfall down into the little valley there, is by having the grasses in front of it. Water is so fun to paint because you can do so much with it, but what really makes it work is what you do around the water, not just the water itself. Okay, for instance, see this real dark grass right here, contrasting it, that now you can really see the water stand out more because you've got the darker values against the lighter values. Okay, now I'm going to kind of just skip over a little bit of a space there where that log is going to go. We're going to come right on in. Now against the rocks, a similar situation here that you had on the other side. Come underneath, don't be afraid to go right up in front of them, because you want these rocks to look like they're settled down within the grass. Okay. Work it. Now don't be afraid if you accidentally go on top of one of your existing rocks. Now, same thing over here that you did over there. Scrub a little bit of the green down into the water so that it starts picking up some of the color. Okay, now you've got the darker values of the grasses. Now very quickly, let's switch to your number 6 bristle brush. Let's block in the log. Now the log's going to be straight burnt umber, so just take plain burnt umber and block in the log. Now we'll come back and put some grass and the rocks back up in front of it later, but let's block in this log. Now it's only going to go part of the way here, and then kind of stop, and then there'll be some water coming over the edge of it. Now I'm going to take a little ultramarine blue and just put on the underneath side of it like this, to darken it, because it will be definitely darker right underneath it. But the top part's kind of just a regular brown. Okay? Now, while that's drying, I think it would be real important for you to quickly move over to this side, do this little patch of grass, and then we'll reflect it into the water. Then we'll highlight our rocks, finish up the little details around the edges, and then we'll move on to our aspen trees here in a second. Okay, let's take the number 10 brush, little purple, little touch of sienna, and continue the grass technique starting right here. Now I had sketched in, like I said, a tree, but I'm just going to paint right over it. Give your grass character. In other words, you know, let it come up a little higher here and there, and so forth and so on. Like so. Okay. Now this is where the waterfall really will start standing out, because again, you've got some areas where the grass will contrast against that brighter white, and now your water becomes more alive. Remember, the secret to a successful painting is that light against dark, that definite contrast. Okay, now don't be afraid to go right up in front of the water. Now see what that does? It shows up good, it comes down, it turns the corner and comes around, and it begins to look like water. Now, if you want to be real brave, you can come down here in the very bottom. I'm going to add just a little purple, and just for the sake of continuing the grass and letting it have a little bit more purpose in the painting, especially down here in the corner, you can put some down at the bottom. This kind of acts as an eye stopper. Okay, that's not a bad idea to have that there, so don't hesitate to do that. Now remember, you need to drag some of this color down into the water. So you dry brush the green like this. Okay, a little more up here. And I'm even going to scrub just a little up here against this shoreline, that green, to kind of darken it. Okay. Now, very quickly, once again, and this is a fairly quick technique, so you just have to kind of get used to it. Let's block in our tree trunk, or highlight the tree trunk, and you take your number 6 brush, and down here, remember what our sunshine is. It's white, a touch of yellow, and a touch of red. Get sort of a nice sunshine color. Now, on top of your tree trunk, you just want a rough, kind of a bark-like texture, so don't paint it smooth, but just be kind of loose like so. Just see, kind of quick and loose, like maybe the edges of the bark is peeling up or whatever. Top of it here. Now I don't have quite enough paint on my brush, so I'm going to add a little more, put it on a little thicker. Now there are going to be a couple of limbs that, you know, stick off, so you can take your brush like that, have a couple of limbs sticking up. Come on down here and go right on down to the water's edge. Okay. Now we'll deal with this part of it here in just a little bit later. Now rinse your brush, and you can go ahead now, just because we don't want to spend forever on the same thing, I'm going to just quickly again show you about highlighting the rocks. You take your white with a touch of yellow. This rock should be fairly bright because it's sort of the main rock in this area. It's very important to the composition. Right on across. Now so you can add little touches of highlight out here, like smaller rocks around it. Highlight that one, it's behind, but you'll see the top of it here. Different places where the rocks may be coming through the grass. Now see, this begins to set everything down. And the painting starts to look a lot more completed, a lot more interesting, three-dimensional, and the whole 9 yards. Okay, you see how that begins to develop? Things begin to stand out. It's really an exciting thing because now your painting looks like it's got purpose. On the edge, I put little dabs of light. You can do the same thing here now. You can brighten this rock up and this rock up. Should be much brighter against the water. And the same thing over in here against the grass. Okay, now see, that's the way we begin to make the bottom part of the painting come alive. Now before we get too far into this, we can come back and forth with this some. I'd like to get up here and do the aspen trees, because the aspen trees really have to have 2 or 3 steps. It's not difficult, but they need 2 or 3 steps. So rinse your brush out. And we're going to switch to another color. Now down here on our palette, we're going to use burnt sienna and red and yellow. Okay? Burnt sienna, red and yellow. Now that's sort of a rusty color. It's got a little more of a gold to it. And you put plenty on your brush, and you use the chisel corner again, and up here, all you do is you're going to build the form of these aspens. Not individual leaves. They leaf out very high, so most of the leaves on these will be high up here. So that's sort of a, well, it's almost an orange color up on the canvas. But be very quick. Don't have to sit there and piddle, play, and putter. Remember the 3 P's. You can get in big trouble in a hurry on these aspen trees if you make too much detail happen. You can even add a little burnt sienna to darken it, because we're going to come back with some bright yellow highlights on top of it to give it the golden aspen color like they have. Now I'm going to do this grove first, and as usual, because of the time factor, we may not get all of them done in their entirety, so you'll have to finish those up on your own. But I'll show you the basics here on how to put the aspens together. Yellow and brown, little red. In fact, the colors can vary as you put it up here, because aspen trees, when they blow in the wind, they take on different colorings. But this is the underpainting, very quick and loose. Now, when you have this color on your brush, and this is sort of a rule in painting, anytime you use an odd color or a complement, always repeat that color elsewhere in the painting, because that creates not only does it create continuity to the painting, but that's how you get your balance, that's how you get your color form, that's how your painting takes on a much more interesting effect. Now notice I'm moving right on across, and I'll move into these later. You can go ahead and do that if you want to. I'm going to move on down to something else here in just a second. Okay. Now, one of the things that's important to remember here is we need to repeat this color. It could be in various forms of it, but down on your palette now, you flatten your brush out like this. You get it flat. See how we flatten it out? You take pure yellow, maybe a little red, and you work it in, just yellow and red. And you're going to dab wherever you feel like there may be some foliage or some mountain flowers, just a little bit of color. You dab it straight on. This creates the illusion. Now if you look real close, you can see the little beads. Looks just like the little wildflowers that grow. Now the colors are important here. You can start with some of the reddish orange. You can add purple flowers. You can add blue ones. You can have yellow ones. You can have green ones. Just throw in a lot of variety and use this little pattern. We've used it before. Right now I'm going to pick up pure yellow and kind of mix it in. Back here I'll just dab in pure yellow. And by throwing that in with what color was on my brush, you create sort of a golden glow. Just so beautiful. Now see, I'm kind of building a little pattern to establish sort of it's kind of like a mountain meadow in a way, you might say. Now this same technique you'll use for highlighting your pine trees, and earlier when we weren't on the program, I went ahead and highlighted this tree. And all you do is take a little yellow and green and highlight that one, and these over here using the same technique. This is our foliage and our flower technique. It's real important that you pick up on this, because you'll use this over and over and over in so many of your paintings. Like right here, for instance, I'm going to kind of have a little break where I want my eye to flow and create a little bit of a hill effect. So I'm going to put these little flowers in here. Now when you put flowers in here, this highlight, don't put it over the whole painting. Just put it in selected areas that will be effective. In other words, wherever you want your eye to flow or whatever. Around the edge of that, you can come up against the tree and see that makes the tree trunk look like it's settled down in the grass. Some brighter yellow up here on top, maybe where the sun is hitting the top of the grasses. And anywhere else you feel like the sun may be hitting an area, you add a little more yellow, perhaps a little white to it, and you can create that nice soft golden glow. Okay, now the next thing you want to do, very quickly, lay your brush down. Let's switch back to our big brush. Squeegee most of the water out of it. Now what I'm going to do here is take a little teeny touch of gesso, because it's pretty creamy, and squeegee your brush and work some gesso into the edge of your brush like this. See, it's right along the edge. Then you come up to where your aspen trees are and you go ahead and put a little bit of that white bark texture right in like so. Now you're just suggesting this, okay? From a distance, you can't see each individual tree trunk. They're kind of overshadowing each other, creating all kinds of interesting developments back there. Now once you get some of the trunks up in there, here and there, just kind of hit and miss. Underneath the trees, you take your number 10 bristle brush with a little bit of, I'd say just a little burnt umber, maybe a touch of purple. And what you're going to do underneath here is you're going to smudge in a little shadow. You can take your finger, or you can just kind of smudge it like this. Right along this edge up here where the trees are, right down in here, because you're going to create a shadow underneath those tree trunks. That's important. Now, after you've done that, then you can come in here and begin adding the brighter yellows. Take the edge of your number 6 brush and pure yellow. And this is where you come back in like this and you start putting the brighter colors. And they kind of come down a little further into the trees here and there, creating a little bit more individual shape to your trees now. Now remember, we're going to be finishing up here shortly, but you need to do these trees, and then you highlight them just like we're doing, and then you come, with the brighter yellow. This creates a beautiful flow, eye flow to the painting, and also can basically be the feature, could be the title of the painting. Aspen Glory or something like that. Anytime you have a significant factor, maybe it's a color or a basic subject, you can call it that. But get all the bright colors in here that you need, but be sure you always repeat that someplace else. Like maybe down here against the waterfall, you may want to have it down here. Some brighter yellows against the water where the grasses are. Up in here, you can reflect a little bit of that color into the water to start making the water become more alive. And the next thing you know, your painting is very, very exciting. Got a lot of color and form. Now, the next thing, because we are, again, running out of time, there's 2 areas where you may want to put a tree. So we're going to take our blue and our burnt umber. I'm going to put one tree right here. Now, this is important. This may be a dead pine tree, I'd say a dead pine tree, that'd be good. And there may be another one on the other side, again with our blue and our brown. Now I told you I was going to have a great big one over here. Instead of leaning it out, I'm going to lean it in. Don't worry that it covered up your pine tree over there. The technique for this is exactly the same as for putting in this one we laid on the ground. You start with your dark value first, then after you've got the dark value, and by the way, always smudge in the brown into the grass around it. That creates sort of a shadow, and then your trunk falls down in place, okay? You can put flowers around it or twigs or whatever. Now, as soon as you've blocked in the dark, then you take your yellow and white with a touch of red, and right on the edge, you put this bright highlight, real loose texture like this. This creates the bark on the tree, and you kind of blend as you go across. Okay. Now this tree gives you the foreground depth, or actually it creates the depth for the whole painting because it pulls things forward, see. Again with your white, yellow, maybe a little red. Just quickly highlight that thing, and while your tree's still wet, you can get a good variety of color. Now, as soon as you've kind of highlighted it, and you feel comfortable with it, you can always come back with your script brush and begin adding the smaller limbs and all the little things, a little umber, a little blue, with plenty of water, And you can come in and you can add little trunks coming off like this, little limbs coming off, hanging down into the painting. This again is a very nice horizontal direction to help break up the vertical, because you'll have a lot of this kind of stuff in a painting. You'll have dead trees, you'll have little branches that come up like this. All through the painting now you can begin detailing, adding all the little things that make you feel comfortable. Well, again, we're out of time. I'm not going to take it any further. I'll let you finish it on your own. God bless you. Thank you for joining us today on the Inspiration of Painting. Stay inspired, and we'll see you next time.